Are you ready for the weekend yet? We have events, news, and a guest for you to enjoy this Lake Life weekend. Hello and welcome to another episode of Lake Life Weekend Podcast. I'm Dirk, I'm your host, and we are approaching weekend 20. I hope you had enjoyed a good fishing opener and had brought your boat out or just fished. I saw many people on the road while we were doing a road trip here to Inspiration Peak, in fact. Oscar and I took the car and we went to Wknd, had lunch at Oma's Bread past Saturday, and we checked out the new brewery in Wknd. We interviewed Brett last year, who was involved here at Disgruntled in Perham and now is involved in drastic measures in Wknd. So that's a place you may want to check out. And Inspiration Peak was a really pretty hike also. As you know, we do a lot of road trips. That was one of it. There's more to come. We are also working on our new magazine, which is going into print in a couple of weeks. We're very excited with more destinations and road trips available. If you are looking for events in the area, you can go to lakelifeweekend.com to find the latest and greatest. So thank you very much for using this and thank you for tuning in. I don't want to keep this much longer for our interview with Beckie Mitchell from the Becker County Museum. And as you know, I really enjoy the arts, and for rainy days or any day, it's good to go to a museum. And we learned about the relevance of preserving our history, of course. And actually, in 1882, I think it was, the people of Becker County decided to preserve history, and they made a smart move, I find, we all find, and we have treasures hidden in those rooms. And you will hear all about that, and also their vision for a brand new museum to be built in the next few years. And everybody's invited to actually donate or support. I think that's really important for us as we play a lot in our Lakes Country area here and enjoy Becker County for the future, hopefully, and learning what happened in the past. So I don't keep this much longer. Thank you again for tuning in. Check out our website. Enjoy this upcoming weekend. And here is Beckie Mitchell from the Becker County Museum. Thank you. Have a great weekend ahead. Welcome to our interview part. I'm here with Beckie Mitchell. Hi, Beckie.
Hi.
Thank you for coming. We were here to talk about the Becker County Museum. You are the executive director there. And before we deep dive into history and visioning the future, the building and the collection exhibits, tell us a little bit more about yourself, if you may. Where are you from? How did you arrive in Lakes Country? And how did you become the executive director of a museum?
Sure. I grew up in the Fargo-Moorhead area, and the Detroit Lakes area was not foreign to me. As so many residents from the Fargo-Moorhead area know, that was our location, of course, on the weekends. And my parents grew up in Detroit Lakes. So my grandparents lived there. I spent my entire life kind of traveling that Highway 10 route back and forth from Fargo to Detroit Lakes. And in my adult life, I left the Fargo-Moorhead area for a few years and moved to Ohio. Mm-hmm. And then when my husband and I decided to move back to this area, most of my immediate family had left the Fargo-Moorhead kind of surrounding area and had moved to various locations, some of which were in Lake Country. And we just really decided that was kind of where we wanted to plant our roots, if you will, and raise our kids in a smaller school district and what have you. So that's how I ended up in the area and worked at the Historic Holmes Theater for almost 10 years, just shy of 10 years. Served on the board at the Becker County Historical Society and Museum. Mm-hmm. And when the position came open for director, I applied, and kind of one thing led to another. So
very good.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in that role?
It'll be 4 years this August.
Yeah,
so.
I think I read that in the newspaper 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I do remember that the position is newer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. But you also mentioned you are an artist.
I am. I have been doing stained glass and mosaic art for Gosh, probably longer than I really want to mention, but about 25 years now. So yeah, I started in my really kind of right out of school years, out of high school years, learned how to do stained glass. And if you are a stained glass artist, you know that you end up with a lot of scrap glass from those beautiful windows and pieces that you make. And that kind of led me into mosaic art. So I've done quite a bit of community outreach with the mosaics. Lots in schools over the years, lots of community projects.
Okay, so you're very involved and passionate about the arts and now also preserving history.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Tell us, maybe the day-to-day of an executive director. How does that work operating a museum? And what does the Becker County Museum and also the Historical Society all provide to the community?
Sure. So I think it really varies. Even in the world of museums in our state, it really varies probably what a director is doing. Just because there's over 400 museums in the state of Minnesota, and every county, I think except for 2, have a county museum. And some of them are maybe a little higher functioning as far as have employed staff that are there on a regular basis, and we fall into that category. Although we are a smaller museum, we do have staff 5 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday. Whereas other museums, even in our region, Mahnomen, for instance, is very volunteer run. And so they maybe have, a paid staff or a dedicated volunteer that kind of takes the charge, but they're not open every day. They're open seasonally or on the weekends. And so those duties probably vary quite a bit. But in my world, I have a staff of 5 people. Some are part-time, 2 are full-time, along with myself. And I manage them, of course, and we're in a really a growing surge right now. We're blessed to be in a surge of extreme growth and participation in our museum. So really looking towards the future of what that programming looks like, really growing our volunteer base, all while kind of keeping our day-to-day activities strong and make sure we have advertising as much as we can out, and really trying to engage the current audience while attracting a newer audience as well.
Growing. I like to hear that a museum is still growing, so the digital time age didn't take away the exhibit.
I think it's changing.
Interesting.
What we've been told in museum world is as we move into the future, because we are not the same sort of society as we once were. We're very disposable, for instance. We don't save things the way we used to. We don't hold on to those trunks and spinning wheels and, TVs and things like that. We dispose of them. So as time moves on, you're going to see the research area of libraries really growing and the digital area. So audio stories and videos and documents, scanned documents, items will become more accessible via computers and online. You'll see that area really grow, and you'll see
also in your place.
Yep, also in our place. And you'll see the exhibit portion. A couple of things will happen. Those items will become reinforcements to what you're reading and researching. So for instance, let's say you're doing an article or you're doing a paper on how the early settlers made butter. Let's just say that. And they refer to a butter churn. So hopefully then you can go out to the collection and find that visual piece to be able to reinforce what you're reading. Because as artifacts break down and everything has its life, as we move forward in time, those artifacts will slowly fade away. And so we really have to work at preserving what we have currently and growing that. I'm guilty of it myself. I clean out my kids' rooms and I maybe don't save that toy that was super popular 2 years ago. Whereas really we should be a little more thoughtful about what we're saving and what we're...
The He-Man hero figure.
Exactly. So we're really changing. And pictures, think about pictures. I mean, how many of us actually print a picture anymore.
Right.
And so although we have way more pictures because we take them on our phones and we take them on our iPads, we don't do anything with those pictures. We don't label them. So just think about that a little bit when you're taking. Yeah, we don't. I mean, there are certainly some that are very into scrapbooking, but as a society as a whole, I don't think we do quite the job we used to. So really think about that. Label your pictures. Who's in them? And if it's an interesting picture, you might want to put them in a folder on your computer or print them off and at some point send them to your local museum.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. No, we are getting a little off already and becoming philosophical, but what is it worth actually to collect from the toys perspective? I mean, I think my son is still very passionate about seeing like an old steel car, which is now probably 80, 90 years old, a toy now.
Yep.
Or like a rocking horse or whatever they call it.
Yep.
Maybe to see it. But what of the nowadays toys are worth preserving? I mean, do we even want to preserve like, what is it called? Minecraft. I mean, how do you preserve that? Do you actually have an iPad now that we're going to display in 30 years and that's what they used to play? And then people look at it like, what?
Yeah.
So who knows? Who knows the future? Yeah.
Exactly.
But, okay, it's a brain training, brain thoughts. Yeah.
Exactly. And you don't know what, of course, is going to become that kind of valuable nugget down the road. So yeah, it's an interesting path we're on for sure.
Right. So now I learned earlier that we are celebrating the 150th anniversary of Becker County in 2021. So we are approaching that, and I'm pretty sure that our exhibit at the Becker County Museum, is filled with early settlers equipment or I want to say materials, but describe the exhibition maybe or the collection.
Okay, so yes, you're correct. In 2021, Becker County will be celebrating 150 years of organization as a county. So that means that's when our county government was established and we kind of became a society, if you will. And Detroit Lakes, the city of Detroit Lakes, is also celebrating 150 years, as well as several townships kind of around the county and churches and what have you. So a lot happened 150 years ago. In our museum, when you come in, we have always a Native American, a First Nations display. We have quite a bit of items in that exhibit. There's regalia. There are the bandolier bags. We actually have the largest bandolier bag. That's the bag that kind of crosses over your body. If you don't know, it hangs down at the side. Yeah. We have the largest collection in the state of bandolier.
That's a Native American bag design?
Yep, Native American bag, yep. Lots of beadwork, birch bark. We have a couple birch bark canoes, actually. So very nice display of Native American items. We also have a meteorite that is the largest meteorite in a private collection in the state. So that's a little interesting tidbit.
Okay. What is a meteorite? Is it
meteorite fell from the sky. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Fell from the sky, landed in a
meteorite. Yeah.
Yeah, and it weighs about 100 pounds. So it's actually a quite substantial meteorite. I've been told, I don't know this for fact, that the next largest fits in the palm of your hand and is at the University of Minnesota. So,
how small is it?
The one at the U of M, I've been told, fits in your hand. Yeah,
but it's heavy.
Well, I don't know. Ours is big. Ours is about the size of a bag of dog food and weighs about 100 pounds. Okay. And what's interesting about that meteorite is I look at that, and if I stumbled across that in my field, I'm not sure that I would think it was anything different than a rock. So It's interesting how somebody had enough knowledge to have that tested.
It fell in Becker County.
Yeah. Yeah.
When?
Back in I want to say back in the 50s, 40s, somewhere like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We have a taxidermy display. We have a display on logging. The east part of our county, the Frazee area, was heavy logging area, so there's that display. We have a one-room cabin that we rotate into different exhibits. Right now it's a trapper's cabin because we have a very large trapping exhibit there right now. But at times it's a early settlers cabin. It's a one-room cabin like they would have built in the early.
And you can experience the lifestyle back in the day.
Yep. There is the first post office in Becker County is on display. We have a very, very extensive military collection. a very extensive rifle collection. There's down in our lower level, we have we dub it the world's smallest gas station. There was a gas station kind of in Detroit Lakes, if you know where the depot is and the Greystone. Right in the middle of Highway 10 in that location, there was a little tiny itty bitty, basically one person can fit inside gas station. So there's a really neat story behind that. But a lot of our exhibits kind of rotate. The focus of what we're portraying, I mentioned that fur trade exhibit. So right now, we kind of clear out as much as we can, and we really have focused on trapping and trading in Becker County. We have an exhibit in from the state called Fur Trading in Minnesota, so there's kind of that state component to our collection. And then downstairs, we have a lot of hands-on activities for kids. So we have lots of furs that they can feel the difference, lots of animal tracking activities, learning how different tracks look so they can identify them when they're out in nature. And so, we've really worked hard on rotating those exhibits. So things like our Native American area or our military area, we always have that focus in those areas, but what's in the exhibit changes. We rotate it out and put different items in.
So, it sounds like I don't want to say a standard museum, but like a good museum with a lot of exhibits to experience. So your audience, if I picture that, is it like a majority of elementary, like younger people?
I would say we have kind of the both ends of the spectrum.
Both.
We have a very strong retiree kind of patron. A lot of our retirees will come in and do a lot of research in the library. We have a great research library.
Yeah, you mentioned that a couple of times. How big is that?
Well, it's right. Our collection is extensive. We have tens of thousands of pictures. We've got documents that were signed in the late 1800s by E.G. Holmes. We have really valuable pieces of information, plat maps, tax records, township records. We have many, many township records. So people coming in to do research on various items, it's a treasure trove. Our challenge is it's not very accessible.
Not catalog.
Yeah, the cataloging has been, over the years there's been definitely concerted efforts in periods of time, but never an ongoing concerted effort.
Sure.
And so as we move into the future, we're really working hard we're actually building our own system of cataloging on a computer so that, if you were to come in a few years and you want to look up information on family resorts, for instance, you could type that in and then what we have should be able to come up. And that project will take decades, but we really are working hard on getting a system in place so that we can continue to grow instead of reinventing the wheel, if you will, every few years.
Right.
So we have a lot of retirees, and then we have the other end, a lot of schools coming in with the younger kids and younger families.
Okay, yeah, sure, that makes sense. But it's also like a rainy day destination, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Is it on the weekends? Do you experience during the, let's say, summer season, do you have a lot of people finding you and looking you up?
Yeah, we really do feel the effects of the tourists. We definitely get busier in the summertime, which is great. People are coming back home. They're visiting, they're traveling. We get people just last week, actually. We had a gentleman in from Mississippi whose great-great-grandfather was Charles Johnston, who's the gentleman who actually founded Detroit Lakes.
So
this was his
Johnston Lake.
Yeah, great-great-grandson came in. So we took a picture of him with his great-great-grandpa's portrait. And,
really?
We'll get people coming in from Norway. We'll get people coming in that have grown up in the area and they're coming back and, just want to say hi or are curious about something. So, yeah, we definitely see a surge in the summertime.
Okay, good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
And do you have like a membership base?
Yep, we do. We have memberships, and those memberships, what does a membership buy you? There's a few, you get a little discount in the gift shop, and you maybe get some sneak peeks at our traveling exhibits. We try to open those an hour early for our members on their opening day. But really what you're getting is the knowledge that that's really what keeps us open day to day. And it's really what fulfills the mission of preserving the past and connecting to today so we can explore the future.
Yeah, I think it's very relevant. How many revolving exhibits? Like you mentioned that they changed. Do you have like one every other month? Is it 6 openings a year program?
Yeah. So if we're talking just our collection and what we have on display, we rotate something every month. Something changes every month in the museum. As far as a traveling exhibit, that has varied, but moving forward, I'm trying to really get at least 2 traveling exhibits in every year, whether it be a state exhibit or a larger exhibit. We've had Smithsonian exhibits,
really?
and I'm really talking a lot with the Smithsonian about 2021 and that celebratory year, hoping to get a larger exhibit in that year. So there's always something new.
How many galleries? I mean, I've been there once, which is too little.
Yeah.
But I know there was an upstairs. You mentioned a downstairs. Do you have an additional room for the traveling exhibits? How is that? How much square foot? How big is it?
They get kind of dispersed with our regular exhibit area.
Okay.
So, in the aisles or up, we do have kind of an event area, we call it. We're located in an old church.
Right.
So that pulpit area up front, we do a lot of, for instance, today we have a brown bag lunch. The second Wednesday of the month, we always have a brown bag lunch. And I know you mentioned you had come to one of those.
Yes.
But that is an area we will put things on display as well. So we kind of intermix it a little bit. Really what we try to do is whatever the traveling exhibit we're bringing in, we try to relate it to Becker County as much as we can. So how can we switch out our exhibits and display items from Becker County that, reinforce whatever that exhibit is. So for instance, right now it's the fur trading exhibit. How did the fur trade and how did trapping affect Becker County? So we try to tell the Becker County side of the story.
Oh, yeah. Oh, interesting. So it's worth to attend regularly.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
If you are a local resident, you always learn something new.
Yep. Yeah, in the fall we have an exhibit coming in called Electrifying Minnesota. So that's the story of how electricity came into the state of Minnesota. We're partnering with the Public Utilities Department in Detroit Lakes, and our exhibit, our local focus will be how it came into Becker County and Detroit Lakes, and we'll have lots of information on that history, but then also the science component of it. Well, how does electricity work, basically?
Well, we had Tim Thompson from the Lake Region Electric Cooperative in our program, and he spoke about the history, how that was even organized. A few farmers that wanted to have electricity. I don't know if it was the 50s or 50s, but rural Minnesota was not really accessible or connected with electricity. So interesting. Yeah, I like those. So that I'm looking forward to that. Now we learned relevance, collection. Your location is by the Holmes Theater across the road,
right on Summit Avenue. Yep.
In a too small of a building. And now looking into the future, because I read articles years ago. What's the visioning? What's the goal? The hopes? Where are we at? Growing? You said we have a lot of growth to do.
Sure. So I'm going to backtrack back to 2015 when I took the position as director. There was a building plan kind of on the table at that time. It was a standalone building, one level. Right adjacent to the Holmes Theater, but not connected. Yeah. And it was a little over a $3 million campaign, and there was about $1.5 million left to raise. Yeah. And I kind of thought, well, I have a lot of connections. I think I can probably, with some time, I can make this happen. And I went out and started meeting with people, and what I found was people just didn't really have a connection with our museum. It wasn't that they didn't support it. It was that they didn't feel that connection. And there's, if you know anything about this region, it's very philanthropic. There's a lot of giving in this region, and there's always projects. At that time there was the mountain had just happened, so people were involved in those pledges. There was the Boys and Girls Club, similar to us, had been working for many years towards a project. The Crisis Center had not been very many years since that had gone up. Right. And so people just, the general public just, as a whole, there wasn't the same connection to the Becker County Museum as there was to some of those other entities. Sure. So I proposed to my board that we take a step back and really do some friend raising and figure out what is our place. Who are we? What do we want to be? And what does this region need from us as a historical society and a museum? So that launched us on a visioning process. I pulled in a gentleman from the State Historical Society to kind of facilitate that visioning process.
Mm-hmm.
We looked really hard at what other museums were doing around the state, what was working and what wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting at a county commissioner meeting one day. I was waiting to present to our commissioners, and the county seal behind their head says Becker County, and then around that it has agriculture, industry, tourism, and forestry. And I thought, of those, everything but tourism, and you could maybe even stretch some tourism, has a science component to it. And so I called our representative at the state, and I said, what do you think of adding a science component to our vision? And he said, let me think about it. He was actually on his way to Detroit Lakes to do one of our visioning sessions, and he got here, and he said, I think that's a genius idea. I think it's great. He said, I don't think in every county it would work, but I see where you're going with this. So we presented it to the board, and we did a little more brainstorming on what that would look like. The intent is not to take away from our history, but really to enhance the story we're trying to tell. So for instance, industries in Becker County, if you start thinking BTD, SJ Rhombus, team, all of those industries have seen tremendous growth and evolution as time has gone on, and two of them are using robots, for instance, every single day in their manufacturing.
Uh-huh.
So we've started to offer robotics camps. That's a need that we're seeing and a desire in our youth. So let's offer these camps and help maybe spark that interest, so someday when they're an adult, maybe that'll carry them through to help support our industry. So we had, not all of our board members were sold on the idea by any means. And so we had a little bit of a test. We happened to have a Smithsonian exhibit coming in on waterways, which of course, there's a lot of history behind our water and what it's done for development and life in Becker County. But it's also very scientific.
Sure.
I know some of your other guests have talked about the science with water and what have you. And so we cleared out our lower level. We took as many of the artifacts and exhibits out as we could, and we really worked on partnerships with the DNR, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Tamarack, just all those natural resources that you can think of, Becker County Soil and Water. And we put hands-on learning down there, activities to really engage our youth. And in that 6 weeks that exhibit was there, we had more people in our doors than we've had in entire years before that.
No kidding.
So it also gave us the opportunity to get right up close with those teachers and say, why now? We always had classes doing tours in our museum, but this was a definite surge of classes. So why now? What brought you now? And the reason was the science. In our schools, history is not a core subject anymore. It's science, math, and reading, which are great subjects. But it's hard to find a connection with a history museum with that.
It's unfortunate, but I think the picture is still this dusty old.
Exactly.
And boring.
Exactly.
Who wants to memorize numbers? So
Exactly.
you really were very contemporary and able to connect to the present, cross-selling the history and giving access again to the relevance of our past.
Exactly.
But being able to preserve and keep telling the story and the pride, because what people maybe also forget, in my opinion, is we are very proud of what we have achieved, but we can and should, and we are most likely always proud of where we're coming from.
Exactly.
So we should memorize or remember or point out maybe how long it took or whatever path we had to take to arrive where we are today. Like at Detroit Lakes and Becker County is thriving in a way. Well, we have a shortage of everything.
Mm-hmm.
We are so good that we need people and whatnot. But we should always remember, we have done that in this short of a time. So I mean, in history, my point is, a museum and history is relevant. I mean, we cannot just live in today. We need
that story of the past to learn for tomorrow, how we can grow for tomorrow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, the science component, the funding is a little bit more available. It's always a struggle with funding in schools for field trips, but they can relate it back a little bit more legitimately for a science field trip. But when they come for that science field trip, they're getting that history museum.
Yeah.
You know, they're getting both.
Yeah.
They're getting more than what they anticipated, basically. And so, that then brought us to a situation with, okay, we've really grown our audience. We're seeing a surge not only in our youth participating in our programming, but their parents and their grandparents. You know, we're seeing a great surge in people really utilizing our facility.
Can you already realize, like, you jumped membership numbers, attendance numbers? So those little 4 years made such a difference. Yeah, and actually we added on, in that 4 years, we've added on one full-time staff. You know, we went from just two people basically running the museum to we have another full-time staff person and 2 part-time staff persons. Wow. So we've been able to grow from that perspective. We had to, because we wouldn't be able to continue that high level of programming without it. That brought us then back to our facility. Our facility is falling apart, basically. We're in an old church, and it is the cost to fix some of the issues structurally in our facility outweigh what it would be just to build something new. Right. And that was, you know, really, that's the ultimate goal, is getting our collection, whether it be paper or a science item or an artifact, in an environment where it can have the longest life possible, where we can have it available for us to learn from for many years to come. Mm-hmm. And right now it's raining today. We have many leaks in our building. We've lost documents. We've lost newspapers due to mold. I mean, it's really a state of kind of emergency. We were, you know, from a usability standpoint, we're not handicap accessible right now, which is a struggle. It's not efficient. The biggest harm to artifacts, as far as a temperature controlled environment, they're kind of like humans. They don't like sudden warm-ups or sudden cool downs. Sure. But it's not so much temperature, it's the humidity. You really have to control that humidity, and we can't control that effectively where we are. So we went back to that plan, that building that was 1 story, and it was a lovely plan, nothing wrong with it. But if we were going to grow in these other areas, in that science component and that hands-on children's component, we needed a larger facility. So I pulled together the community center, our neighbors, community center and chamber, as well as county and city officials, and we really looked at what is the best plan for people using the facilities? What's the best plan for our patrons? Parking is a huge need on that block. If you've ever been there at 5 p.m. or about 8 a.m., there's no parking. Sure, because
the community center is busy, and that's a great problem to have, honestly. What are some situations within, if we were to attach within both entities, that we could solve together by a new facility? So we've looked at, for instance, the Holmes Theater box office is open from 10 to 2 right now. Well, we're 10 to 2 Monday through Friday. The museum is open 10 to 4 Tuesday through Saturday. So we could share possibly a box office space and allow greater accessibility for ticket purchases to the public, as well as having then an extra set of hands in that box office. So you've got museum and Holmes Theater representatives available to help you. So we really looked at some creative ideas, and that brought us to the plan that we have today. The Holmes Theater and the museum will share that lobby space. We'll have a box office space. We'll have a gift shop space. We revitalized the museum gift shop about 2 years ago now. It's really brought a lot to our bottom line. We lost our bookstore in town a few years ago, and so we feature a lot of local topics of books. We feature a lot of local authors in there, or regional authors. So that'll be a space that both entities could sell items out of, as well as the fitness facility. There'll be a coffee shop location. There'll be, of course, our research library will really grow. That component we talked about with the digitization of items within our library will move into that facility, at least with the start of that having occurred. Probably the thing I'm most excited about is we will actually have a room similar to what we're sitting in now to be able to record histories of people. So, we'll be able to bring in somebody that worked on ice harvest or worked on the railroad and sit down and talk to them tell me about working on the railroad in the 1940s.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be able to record those stories. We've started to do a little bit of that. We did that with ice harvest a few years ago, and have recorded some of those individuals and have heard back from family members. Now, some of those individuals have already passed, unfortunately, but we've heard back from those family members of how valuable that is to them to have that voice recorded.
That's what I think.
For the future. So I'm really excited about that area.
Mm-hmm.
Our exhibit hall will grow in size, so we'll be able to have more exhibits. We'll be able to have larger traveling exhibits come in.
Mm-hmm.
And then upstairs on our second floor level, we'll have there's a huge classroom space that the walls will open up, so it'll be an event area with a small rooftop garden area.
Wow.
So, we can do events there. We could have a small musician group from the Holmes play there. We could have a fitness class from, maybe the fitness side wants to do a yoga class out on that rooftop space. We're really cooperating, I think, is the biggest.
Multi-purpose building.
Exactly. Really working together. Although it will be owned by the museum, and the community center still will function as it was, we're really looking at that partnership. And then the hands-on science and children's learning center is really going to just bring so much to our region's youth. The possibilities are limitless, really.
Right.
If you think about some of the shows that the Holmes Theater brings in, let's say they're bringing in a show on World War II, we can then do an exhibit that relates back to Becker County. Or vice versa. This coming fall, we have an exhibit coming called Electrifying Minnesota, and we'll do that Becker County component to it. Well, maybe the Holmes Theater then has a kids show that features something about electricity.
Sure. Yeah,
so
I like that.
Really working together as partners and neighbors, and really, in the end, enriching the lives in Becker County.
Yeah, really great. How far are we with the realization of that plan? Like, you mentioned 1.5 million was pledged 4 years ago. Are we? It sounds a little bit more expensive now.
Yeah, just a little bit more.
5 to 10 million.
Yeah.
Like, where are we at with that?
Exactly. Good question. So, adding a floor and square footage always increases price. So, we did add the floor. That's cheap. It's cheaper to go up than to go out, of course.
Sure.
And so the current facility is at $6.4 million is the price tag. We still have that 1.5 in pledges from a few years ago, and the city of Detroit Lakes recently pledged $500,000, so we're at about the 2 million mark. So we have about 4.4 left to raise.
Yeah, shy of a third.
Yeah,
2/3 left.
Yeah. We do have on the state level some bond dollars. There is a bond bill that has been proposed that will likely not happen in 2019. It's not an official bonding year. So, but hopefully, fingers crossed, it will happen in 2020. If that were to happen, that's worth $3 million.
And explain that. A bond would be a loan?
A bond is actually you apply for bonding dollars. No, it's really you're awarded those dollars.
From the state?
Yeah, from the state, yep. It's a tough process, and of course you're competing with the entire state. But our local representatives, Senator Wknd and Representative Marquardt, are the individuals who've introduced that bond bill, and they really see the value in this facility from all aspects, from the arts, from the culture, from the science. It's not even STEM, it's not even STEAM, it's STEAM with history. So we really have all of the components and physical fitness actually all under one roof. Really the cooperation of two different entities really working together to form one large entity that is the best for our community. So.
And the hopes are to have that built by 2022, 2023, or?
We actually have a pretty aggressive timetable, and that goes back to the condition of our building. Because we've been kind of in this rotation for about a decade of trying to get a new building and planning. That planning started about 10, 12 years ago. Our building has really depreciated in that time. And so the hope is to break ground in the summer of 20 and be moving in by the fall of 2021.
Well, that's aggressive.
It is very aggressive,
Yeah.
very aggressive.
Okay.
But we won't know until we start.
Yeah.
And really, it comes down to when you break that down, if we all gave up 1 cup of coffee a day for 3 years, we'd have our building.
I know.
That's where the finances end up, I did the math, if every household in the county was able to give like $375, we would have our building.
Yeah.
So it is a lot of money, but it really does break down to a pretty reasonable contribution at any level. Any gift helps that bottom line. So,
Yeah.
And I think back to, this organization in 1882, I'm just looking at my notes here, that 1882 is when those early pioneers kind of had the forethought of, we need to start preserving what's happening for the future.
Really?
And so they started that, the Early Pioneer Settlers Union, and I think how cool would it be at our 150th anniversary as a county and a city to be reopening something that is fit for not only the past and today, but also the future.
It's a social responsibility almost.
Yeah.
To capture today, So
Right.
So I think we should all do. I'll buy a membership today. Actually,
Right.
I think everybody should.
Yeah.
It's that easy. So I will, and I probably will come more often, and I gladly communicate your efforts and statuses. And I think it's very relevant. I'm glad I learned so much today.
Yeah, good. I'm glad I was able to help you learn.
Well, it was very surprising when I called you. It was like, oh yeah, sure, I come. I was like, I didn't even have to explain what we are doing. So you knew about us and you knew about our little program. That was very nice. Thank you for that. And I'm glad that you're using this vehicle that we are able to communicate your story. And I wasn't aware of that aggressive plan, but that's coming up. I work a lot with time.
Yeah,
and timing is of the essence.
Yep.
So I hope I will be able to share the story, and people can go, what is it, BeckerCountyMuseum.com or org?
It's BeckerCountyHistory.org.
Okay.
And our website will be going under a little remodel. It's desperately in need of it. But we're very active on our Facebook page.
Okay.
Or you could call us at 218-847-2938, and we'd be happy to sit down and talk to you about this plan or what we have as far as future exhibits. We have lots of great stuff happening in the future. So I just, I encourage you to get involved and really, I think when we are in our 20s to probably about 40s, we're in a different frame of mind. We're trying to, make ends meet basically, and working on the house, and you're busy with kids, but we have so many opportunities that are multi-generational, and just bring those this Saturday, for instance, there's, a family day. So come in, there's activities, and we have those every single month. So there's always something to do.
Yeah, very, very, very cool. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
I will see you soon.
All right, sounds great. Thank you.
Have a good weekend. Yeah, this was already our newest episode of the Lake Life Weekend podcast. We sure hope you enjoyed it. Tune in again next week with another great guest and updates. Always check out our website, lakelifeweekend.com, and if you have some comments, please feel free to email us at hello@lakelifeweekend.com, and you have a wonderful weekend ahead.